Hi guys, and welcome to another video. This time we're going to look at the AQA GCSE Foundation November 2022 paper. It's paper 1, so it's a non-calculator, and I'm going to talk through each question, and if there's any pitfalls or any things to watch out for, I'll try and highlight them as we go. So, looking through them. If we're looking at the question 1, circle the length of time between 4 PM and 5:05 PM. So it's relying on you knowing 60 minutes is 1 hour. So to get from 4 to 5 PM is 1 hour, so that's going to give me 60 minutes. And then I'm just adding any additional minutes that I've got on here. So I've got 5 minutes extra, add that on, that gives me my 65 minutes. Okay, just take care that you don't think about the 105. Okay, if we're thinking the base 10, and we've got something like that, if I was to just say the difference between the two, okay, it's very easy to then put 105. Okay, so as a decimal, that's what that would be, but that would be totally wrong in relation to the time. Okay, so just watch out for that. Time was in base of 60 minutes. So, question 2. A circle has a diameter of 10 centimeters, so if we can just draw a quick circle here, and my diameter goes straight through the center of the circle and goes all the way across. My radius only goes to the center of the circle from the circumference, so it's only halfway. So I'm going to just divide that by 2. 10 divided by 2 is going to give me my 5 centimeters. Question 3. This is again relying on you having the knowledge that we're pulling out that half is 50% and 3/4 is 75%. A relatively straightforward way of doing that is just like a bar model. So halfway is there, 3/4 is there, and again trying to think 1/4, 25, 50, 75. So we're at these 2 points. So somewhere between 50 and 75% is going to give me my 60%. Question 4. Circle the value of 3 squared plus 4 squared. Well, 3 squared we know is 3 times 3. 4 squared is 4 times 4. Okay, don't fall into the trap of 3 times 2 is 6 and 4 times 2 is 8, because you can see 14 is where they're going to put that answer. That is not the right answer. Okay, 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 plus 9 gives me 25. Okay, so I'm just going to add those two together. Question 5. If we can imagine this like whenever we've got any variables, we put a pot just to put them variables in. This is my pot for A's, this is my pot for B's. Okay, so A's I've got the coefficient, the number in front of I'm going to put first. So 8 lots of A with the sign plus 6 lots of A, that's going to give me 14A. And if I look at the B's, I've got 5 lots of B at minus 2 lots of B, take away 2 lots of B, and 5 take away 2 is going to give me 3. So my answer, 14A plus 3B. Okay. One thing just to notice on this one is if it was minus 5B minus 2B, okay, again it's very easy to put that in there as minus 5 minus 2 and think, well, 5 take away 2 is 3 and the minus sign means it's minus 3B. Okay, just to save you making that mistake, a really easy way of doing it is to say, well, here's my 0. I'm starting at minus 5. That's my first one. Okay, and if I'm starting at this point, if I'm adding, I'm always going to go towards 0 from this point. If I'm subtracting, I'm going to go further into the minuses, and I'm going to go 2 more spaces into the minuses. So that's going to be minus 6, minus 7. So that would be my answer if it was this one at the top. So just take care with the negative signs. Question 6. Anytime we've got numbers written in the question, more often than not, they're going to be used within that question as they're going to go through. So let's have a look how we're going to use this one. So we've got 200 students were asked about the monthly cost of their phone contract. Here are the results. So we've got 40 and 90, 32 and 38. Now we've got a two-way table here, so I could really easily just put the totals in here, which is going to help me a little bit later on. Okay, so 40 plus 90 is 130, 32 plus 38 is 70, and if I total that, that gives me 200. And if I do 40 plus 32, that gives me 72. And then 90 plus 100 plus 38 gives me 128. And again, those two will total to equal 200 each time. So let's look at what questions they want us to answer. How many more students, so that's in bold, so it's really important. So how many more students, school students, than college students were asked? So school students is first. So we've got 130. College students, we're going to subtract that away, is 70. And that's going to give me my answer of 60 students. And again, your 2 marks for that, 1 mark for the 60. Okay, the second mark is to sum them across and then subtract them away. So we'd already done that in our two-way table. Second question, what percentage of the 200 students had a monthly cost less than £25? Well, here's that 200. So of the 200 students, what percentage? So we want it in a percent and less than £25. So let's have a look. Less than £25 is this first one here, which is the 72. So that's the value I'm going to use, 72 over 200. So remember that percentage, as we did earlier, is out of 100. So how can I get 200 down to 100? I'm just going to divide by 2. So I can do the same thing with the numerator. Divide it by 2. 72 divided by 2 gives me 36. So it's 36%. Whenever my denominator is 100, the numerator is always the percentage value because it's out of 100. Question 7. The only animals on a farm are 30 cows and 80 sheep. 1/5 of the cows are sold and 5/8 of the sheep are sold. Work out the total number of animals that are sold. So we want how many are sold and then we want the total of that, so we're going to add it together. So let's do a line at a time. So 1/5 of the 30, so I'm going to divide that by 5. So 5 into 30 goes 6. And if I times it by the 1, that's just going to give me 1/5 equals 6. Okay, if I'm looking at the sheep this time, divide by the denominator. So I've got 80 divided by 8, that's going to give me 10. This time I've got 5/8 are sold, so I'm going to times the 10 by 5. That's going to give me 50. And I'm just going to add the two together. 50 plus the 6 is going to equal 56. If I look to the answer line, make sure you always put the answer on your answer line. 56 animals sold. Question 8. Some gamers were asked which type of video game they preferred. 65% said action, 19 said role playing, the rest said sports. What percentage said sports? Now again, we're back to percentage being out of 100. So 65 plus the 19 is the first part. That's going to give me 14. Add the 1, 6, 7, 8. 84% are these two. And then how many else do I need to add to that? So my 100, take away the 84. And again, if you're looking to take this away, this is where some people will make the mistake of saying 26, because 4 away from 10 will give me 6, 8 away from 10 will give me 2, and you haven't accounted for any borrowing. So if you don't use this method where we borrow across, so borrow that 1 into this column, into the tens column, that gives me 10 tens. I need to borrow 1 from the tens column into the units column, so 4 away from 10 gives me 6, 8 away from 9 gives me 1. My answer is 16%. If you are one of the people that's going to go into the exam and try and do that without showing the workings, my advice to you is purely this. Break it down and say 80 away from 100 gives me 20. I've used that one. And then 4 away from 20 is going to give me my 16. So chunk it down and do it that method, as opposed to if you're not going to show the workings. I would always advise showing the workings, but it's a very easy mistake for people to put 26% there. Question 9. A diagonal of a rectangle is drawn on a centimetre grid. The sides of the rectangle are the grid lines, are on the grid lines. Okay. Work out the area of the rectangle. So the first thing to do for a start is to try and draw that rectangle in. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, so I have 4 squares along. 1, 2, 3 squares down. Okay, 4 along, 3 squares. Okay, area, times them together. 4 times 3 is going to give me 12. So I'm going to show that. I'm going to use 4 times 3 equals 12, and that's 12 centimetres squared. On anything area wise, always look to see if the units are there. If the units are not there, and you even don't know how to, if you got to a point where you don't know how to answer the question, if it's an area question, always put units squared. That's going to get you a mark. If it's a volume question, always units cubed, because again, if the unit measurement isn't there, you will get a mark for that. Part B. One side of a parallelogram is drawn on a centimetre grid. The parallelogram does not have any right angles, so it can't be a rectangle. Okay, so it doesn't have any right angles, so complete the parallelogram so that it has an area of 24 squares in total, 24 centimetre squares. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember the area of a normal rectangle. That's my starting point. Okay, so we're at that point of 1, 2, 3, 4. If I did that as my shape, okay, that's going to give me 24 centimeters squared. Now, parallelogram is, if you like, a pushed over rectangle. That's how we imagine it. So we could make that go 1 square. We could make it go 2 square. We could make it go 3 square. We can make it go any amount of squares, just offset, and then we can draw that on the grid. So as long as we have our starting point of getting the 24 squares, it's then very easy to say, well, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then because we offset it by 2 squares, we can draw that parallelogram there. So this would be correct if you drew it from the 3rd square, and we're going to go across here. That would also be correct if I drew that back up to there. It just means that the slant of the parallelogram is slightly more, but we're still 6 squares long. Okay, we could go 1 square less. We could go to there if we wanted to do. Okay, and as long as we are only 6 squares wide, that's still going to give me my 24 squares, because I've got 6 by 4 perpendicular height. So my height has to be 4 and my width has to be 6. It could go the opposite direction as well. We could go over here to the right instead of going to the left, as long as it's just offset. Question 9c. 2 sides of a rhombus are drawn on this grid. Complete the rhombus. Now, a rhombus is my diamond shape. If we're going to look at this, the sides are all the same length, so they are 2 squares along, 3 squares up, 2 squares along, 3 squares down. So if I go from this point here, 2 squares the opposite direction, that's where my sides are going to go, to make that equal sides in each way. And I'm just going to draw those 2 sides in. It's only a 1 mark question, so rhombus means all these sides are the same length. Question 10. Here was a calculation. 428 times 30 equals 12,840. Use the calculation to help answer the following questions. So any question where it's saying use the calculation, we're looking to say, let's have a look at that value. Has it changed or is it the same? No, it is exactly the same. Okay, let's look at the other part of the calculation. 428, has it changed or is it exactly the same? No, it's exactly the same. The only difference that's changed is the function. So whatever the value is I've got left, that's going to have to then equal 30. Okay, the fact that I've divided it as opposed to times it, I'm just rearranging the different calculations to find what the answer is. Just going to rub that top bit out. let's have a look at the second part for this one. It's now wanting me to circle the value, so it's giving me 4 different values. So just be aware that they may be trying to mislead you on this one. Let's see what I've got the same. My 30 is the same. Yep. And this time, my 428 has changed. But if I can try and link these two together, if I did 428 divide by 2, I would get 214. That's half as big. Okay, so that must mean then if it's half as big, my answer is going to have to be half as big. So 12,840 divided by 2. So if I just do a division there, 2 into 1 doesn't go, 2 into 12 goes 6, 2 into 8 goes 4, 2 into 4 goes 2, and 2 into 0 goes 0. 6420. Question 11. A shop sells notebooks and pencils. There's a lot of information in the question here, so we're just going to take it down a little bit at a time. So Marek buys some packs of notebooks. The cost is £60. In total, how many notebooks does he buy? So he's only dealing with this one at the minute, the notebooks. He buys 8 packs for £12. So they give me £12 in the question. They give me £60 in the question. So I'm going to take those two values. I'm going to say how many lots of 12 can I take out of 60? So 12 into 60 is going to go 5 times. So if I get 5 packs and there are 8 in a pack, so I'm going to use the other thing they gave me in the question. 5 times 8 is going to give me 40 notebooks. So my answer, 40 notebooks. Second part of the question, work out the cheapest cost of 10 pencils. So sometimes these two things will be involved in the same part of the question. On this one, they've split them. So I want 10 pencils. How do I get 10 pencils in the cheapest way? Well, if I buy 1 pack of 6, it's going to give me £2.70. If I buy 2 packs of 6, I've got 12 pencils, 14, and that's going to give me £5.40 for 12. If I buy 10 lots of 56p, that's going to give me £5.60 for 10. Okay, so already buying the 2 packs of 6 would be cheaper. Would it now be cheaper to buy 1 pack of 6 at £2.70 and then 4 lots of 56p? Well, 4 times 56 is £2.24. So again, I would just do that, making sure I'm showing my workings. 4 times that is 20, £2.24. So I'm going to add the £2.24 there. 494. Okay. Now, don't fall into the trap here where you're saying, well, I've got 2 extra pencils, so that's better value. Okay, this one wants to know what the question says is 6 pencils is £2.70, 4 pencils aren't bought individually is £2.24, so that's going to give me £4.94, and that's the cheapest way of buying 10 pencils. Remember, anything to do with money, always 2 decimal places. Very often they'll leave it so that'll be like 4.9, and then they will take a mark off you if you don't put the extra 0. We've just gone on to the next page, so be careful, 11C, so it still relates to that same sort of question. The shop also sells folders for £3.20 each. The shop has an offer, buy 3 folders, get another one half price. So first thing, without going any further into the question, half price, I'm going to divide it by 2. 2 goes into 3 once, remainder 1. Make sure the decimal point goes above. 2 goes into 12 6 times, 2 goes into 0 times. So £1.60 is going to be the cost of 1 folder, and I'd have to pay £3.20 for the 3. Work out the cost of 4 folders using this offer. So I've got 3 folders at £3.20, which is going to give me £9.60, and I've got 1 folder at £1.60, which is going to give me 12, £11.20. Okay, and again, whenever you do any workings, make sure you check it as you're putting it on the answer line that it is exactly what you've put. A lot of people, when they transfer it from what their workings to the answer line, some of them will make a mistake on putting that down there, so just check as you go through. Question 12a. A, B and C are connected by paths. Okay, so when we're looking at this question, we're thinking, well, we've got 3 different paths. That's A to B, that's A to C, and that bit there is B to C. Okay, so that's what I see in the question. Next bit, Nathan and Sue each walk from A to B. Okay, so Nathan walks along the path A to B, so Nathan goes on this one here, so that's Nathan's path. Okay, and then Sue walks along the path A to C to B, so Sue goes this side. Okay, so this is Sue's path, and she also gets down to here, so Sue's going to go on both of these paths. Nathan will only use the one. How much further does Sue walk than Nathan? So it's telling us that she's walking further. Okay, give your answer in kilometers. So because it wants my answer in kilometers, we've got kilometers, kilometers, meters. 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. So if I divide 800 by 1,000, okay, that's going to give me 0.8 kilometers. If I'm going to divide 800 by 1,000, you can still use your bus stop method here. Okay, divide into this. Anytime I've got some zeros, I can cancel them off if I've got them on both. So I could say, how many 10s go into 8? If I put my 8 back, how many 10s into 80? 0.8, and there's my 0.8. Now we need to work out how much further. So Nathan is 2.1, he goes from here right the way down to B, so that gives me 2.1. So Nathan is 2.1. Sue, okay, starts at A and goes 1.9 plus 0.8. Because we do both of these paths, we get to C, and then we do 0.8. So adding those two together, that's going to give me 2.7. Okay, and then I'm going to take them away from each other. So I've got 2.7 subtract 2.1, which gives me 0.6 kilometers. But again, my units are there, so I don't need to put that, but 0.6 kilometers. 12b, a straight path between D and E, so D to E, passes through point P. D to E is 200 meters long, so in total it's 200 meters long, but P is 60 meters closer to E, so it's closer to E than it is to D. So if I think as a starting point, let's say that this was dead in the middle, that would be 100 meters. I'm just going to move it 10 meters at a time. So if I move it to 110, okay, so this side would be 110 meters, this side would be 90 meters. The difference between that is 20. Let's move it 10 again, so that's 120. So we've now got 120 meters and 80 meters. So we're just adding 10 to one side, we're taking 10 away from the other. The difference there is 40 meters. So if I do it once more, 130 meters is where P is. Okay, remember it's not drawn accurately, so I'm just trying to visualize it there. Okay, so 130 meters between D to P, so that bit there is 130. So that means that bit there would then be 70 meters. The difference between 130 and 70 is my 60 meters. Okay, so I know that's my value. Now let's have a look what they want in the question. They want me to say, work it out in the ratio dP to PE. So D to P, that's my 130 as a ratio to PE. So to PE, which is 70, and we want it in its simplest form. Okay, well, if I can divide both of these by 10, it would be 13 to 7. So my ratio 13 to 7. Remember, DP has to come first. Okay. And again, trying to visualize that, okay, is probably your easiest way of getting to that 60 meters closer. We want the difference between these two values to be 60. Okay. Question 13. Emma tries to simplify CD times 2. Her method is C times 2 equals 2C, D times 2 equals 2D, C2 times D2 equals 4CD. What's wrong with her method? Okay. It's very easy on the questions like this to just look at her method and then follow exactly the same thing. So my advice is always, if it says what's wrong with their method, her method, his method, just look at what they give you to start with and you calculate it as you would calculate it. So if I did CD multiplied by 2, well, I've just got 2 lots of CD. Okay, I'm timesing the whole thing by 2, 2 lots of CD. What has she got in the answer? 4 lots of CD. Now the difficult thing is to put down what she's actually done in her method in comparison to what you've got. Okay, and she's in effect multiplied by 2 twice. Okay, remember CD is C multiplied by D multiplied by 2. So if I do that from left to right, C times D is CD times 2 is 2CD. And again, if you can put what your working was to solve it, that explains a lot of what the actual method is. Okay, she's multiplied by she's multiplied by 2 twice, and you could put it should be 2CD, and again, because that's part of your working, so it explains that. Question 14. Very common mistake and misconception happens on when I'm multiplying by decimals. So if you think about 0.37 multiplied by 0.26, the first thing that people try and do when they're multiplying by decimals is that they'll line them up. Okay, and if these decimal numbers weren't equal, they would then put a 0 to try and get the numbers equal. Okay, if you're thinking about what that actually is, I've got 2 decimal places on the first number and 2 decimal places on the second number. So I'm just going to put up here 4 decimal places. I've got 4 decimal places in total. I've got 4 dots, 4 decimal places. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to ignore the decimals in their entirety, and I'm just going to multiply the digits together, making it a simpler multiplication. 6 times 7 is 42. 6 times 3 is 18, plus the 4 gives me 22. Put my placeholder down. 2 times 7 is 14. 2 times 3 is 6, add the 1 is 7. Then add it through. 2, 6, 9. So 962. Now I need 4 decimal places. And this is where another place people will go wrong. They will put the decimal point just there, because these two numbers have got 2 decimal places. Okay, that's one of the common misconceptions. Okay, so let's remove that decimal point out. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places, so my decimal point is going to go there. Remember, a decimal without any start always starts 0 point, and I've got 1 placeholder to infill there to make sure I've got 4 digits in front. So my answer, 0.0962. I've got 4 decimal places. Question 15. A linear equation with a double-sided x. It's got an x on both sides. So anytime you've got a equation that you're trying to solve, the key is to try and make it easier at each stage until you get down to the fact you've just got x on its own. I would always say start with the x's and remove the smallest x. So I'm looking to say remove the smallest x value. So I've got 11x, 6x. So 6 is smaller than 11. So let's try and remove that. by subtracting it. 6x, take away 6x would be nothing, so it disappears. But I've got to do it both sides. Remember to balance the equation. Okay, 11x minus 6x is going to give me 5x. All the rest I'm going to bring down because the numbers I haven't done anything with the 3 and I haven't done anything with the 1. Next step, remove the number from the side where the x's are. So do the inverse, the opposite function. So if it's subtract 3, I'm going to add 3 because minus 3 and plus 3 gives me 0. That's going to disappear. 1 plus 3 gives me 4. And this time I've got 5 lots of x equals 4. That looks a lot simpler than what I started with. And my last stage here, divide through by whatever is the coefficient. So divide through by that will just give me 1x. So my answer will be 4/5. I could put that as a decimal or a fraction, it makes no difference. I'm going to leave it as a fraction. Just one thing to note here as well, if that was minus 5x equals 4, I'm still going to divide through by the whole of the coefficient, including the sign. Okay, if I divide through by minus 5, okay, my x value is going to equal minus 4/5 because one's positive, one's negative. So you can have a negative as an answer. The rule of thumb is divide through by the entirety of the coefficient, including the sign. Ideally, by taking the smallest version of x, you should always have a positive variable that you've got left. But if you don't, if it gets that you've got a negative on there, you can divide through by the negative. And that will cancel that out. Question 15b. 2x divided by 5 equals 14. Again, I'm looking to solve it. Okay, so I've got 2 lots of x divided by 5 equals 14. If you're thinking about trying to solve this, the 2 is right in the close to the x. It's the first function that happens 2x. So can we get rid of the furthest thing away first? Can we get rid of the divide by 5? To do that, remember I do the inverse, which is multiplied by 5. Divide by 5 multiplied by 5 will eliminate itself and just leave me 2x. And I've got 14 times by 5 is going to give me 70. Okay. At this point, if you need to come over here and then sort of like calculate it, show the workings that you've done that. And to get rid of the 2, remember I've got a coefficient, so I'm going to divide by the coefficient to give me x. So how many 2's go into 70? Half of 70 is 35. Question 16. Bag A and bag B each contain only red discs and green discs. Bag A contains 28 red discs. There are twice as many red discs as green discs. Bag B contains 20 green discs. There are 3 red discs for every green disc. Okay, work out the total number of discs. So, on a question like this, I would try and again visualize what it's telling me. So I've got 28 red, and there are twice as many red discs as green discs. So my green must be half of whatever this is. So I think twice as many red, so there's half as many green as there are red. So once I've got that sorted, I know there's got to be 14 green discs in there. The next bag, so that's bag A. This is bag B. There are 20 green discs. So I'm starting with green this time. And then there are 3 red discs for every 5 green discs. So 3 to 5, 6 to 10, 9 to 15. So all I'm doing is I'm adding 3 each time and adding 5 each time. So I'd end up with 12 to 20. Well, I've got 20 green. So the red discs, there must be 12. So how many discs have I got in total? That's what it wants to know, total number of discs. So I've got 28 plus 14 plus 12 plus 20. And I'm just going to add that through. So 10, 14, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 74 discs. So that's question 16A. That's suggesting that 16B is part of 16A. Right? So here's my bag A. Here's my bag B. and now I'm adding an extra bag C. So bag C is empty. The 28 discs that we had in here, I'm just going to write these ones in. Remember, we had 12, 28, we had 14, and we had 20. That's what we had from the part A question. The 28 discs, red discs from A, are put into C. So we're going to take them from here and move them into C. So 28 red discs are going in there. They've now gone. The 20 green discs from B are also put into C. So they've now gone. One disc is now picked at random from each bag. Complete each statement. So the probability of a red from A is, well, I've taken all the red out. So the probability must be 0. There are 0 red discs in there. There's only 14 green discs. Okay. The other thing is 0 out of 14, while it is correct, would always be written as 0. So anytime I've got 0 on the top of a fraction, always write it fully as 0, not as a fraction. Probability of a red from B is, well, I've got 12 red discs out of 12. So 12 out of 12. I could also write that if it's all of them as 1 whole 1. 12 out of 12 is 1 whole 1. Both would get you the answer, 12 out of 12 or 1. And the probability of a red from C. Well, in total I've got 48, so that's my denominator. Red discs, I've got 28 red discs. Now I'm going to look back up at the question. Okay, it doesn't tell me to simplify it. It just tells me to write the probability. It doesn't tell me to simplify it. So that would give me 4 marks. If it asks me to simplify it, I'm just going to divide these down by 2 initially. Then I can divide them by 2 again. So I could put 7 over 12. If I wanted to do that one step, divide that by 4, gets me to 7 over 12. Okay, and divide that by 4, same. Didn't ask me to actually write that as a simplified version, so 28 out of 48 is where I would leave it if I was doing that question. Question 17. What is 1/20th as a decimal? So 1 divided by 20. Now if you imagine this, anytime I've got a fraction, 1 over 20, if you imagine that there is a bus stop sitting on top of the numerator, on top of where the division line is, and that 20 comes outside. That way you can always divide by the right number. So 20 is going to 1 0 times. Carry the 1 backwards. I'm going to put some zeros here. 20 into 10 goes 0 times. So that 10 goes backwards. 20 into 100 goes 5 times. So 20 goes into 100 0.05 times. Question 18. Straightforward ratio question. We've got given a total, we're given a ratio, we just need to divide into it. So add the parts together. So rule 1 is add the parts. 3 plus 7 is going to give me 10 parts. Rule number 2, divide total by the number of parts that you got from part 1, rule 1. So I'm going to do 62 divide by 10. Well, 10 goes into that 6.2 times. Okay, so my answer is 6.2 is 10%, or dividing 62 by 10. Okay, and rule 3, multiply out the ratio by the answer to part 2. So 6.2 was the answer to part 2. So I'm going to do 3 times 6.2, ratio 7 times 6.2. 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 6 is 18, 1 decimal place. 7 times 2 is 14, 7 times 6 is 42, add the 1 is 43, 1 decimal place. 18.6, 43.4. Just going to check the question. Is it a money question? Is it pounds? If that was pounds, I would need to make sure I put a second decimal place. It's not pounds, so I can leave it like that. Okay. Don't then try and simplify that back to the ratio, because you would get straight back to 3 to 7. N is an odd number. Okay, so really important. N is odd. So odd numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Any odd number ends in 1, 3, 5, 7 or 9. Why is N, bracket N plus 1, always an even number? Well, let's pick one of our easy odd numbers. Let's say I'm just going to take 1 to start with. 1, bracket 1 plus 1. Well, 1 plus 1 is always going to give me 2. And 1 multiplied by 2 is going to give me 2. Okay, let's try another one. Let's say 3. So 3, bracket 3 plus 1. 3 plus 1 is going to give me 4. And 4 multiplied by 3 is going to give me 12. I'm going to try one more, and just to make sure, let's say I've got negative 1. Okay, negative 1, negative 1 plus 1. Negative 1 times 1 gives me 0. And negative 1 multiplied by 0 would actually give me 0. Wouldn't give me anything odd. What's happening in the bracket? That's the key thing. In the bracket, each time, the answer in that bracket is going to give me an even number. Okay, so odd plus 1 is always even. Okay, odd plus 1 is always even, and that's the reason. Now, all I did there was took 2 odd numbers and put it in. You wouldn't have needed to do this one. I just wanted to highlight that you could use negative odd numbers as well. It doesn't tell me it's got to be a positive odd number, which is why I put that in. But I've just substituted in 1 and 3, multiplied that through, and you can see we've got the answer. And we can see why that is. Alright, so you just need to, this is your justification by showing these 2 examples. That if I put 1 in, it becomes 2. If I put 3 in, it becomes 12. If I put 5 in, 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. So I'm creating a pattern where the solution is always an even number. Question 20. As soon as you see a grid like this, especially if it's got inequality symbols there, so we're dealing with a range, you may need to put some columns to work out if they want the mean. Okay, tick each statement. So it's not asking me to calculate the mean, it's just asking me for the values that's inside each of these cells. So here is some information about the time spent on social media by 40 women and 40 men last week. Okay, tick 1 box for each statement. Now the key thing to remember on this one is greater than 2 but less than or equal to 5, greater than 5, less than or equal to 8, and so on. So that's my categories, that's my my range, if you like. So let's look at the first statement. 3 of the women, so we're definitely looking at women, spent more than 11 hours on social media. So we're looking for the women column, more than 11 hours. Well, that could be 11, so this is more than 11 hours, more than 11 hours. So in them two brackets, I've got 3 women, so definitely true. Second one, the range of the men is 15 hours. So the range of the men goes from bigger than 2, so it could be 2.0001, all the way up to 17. Okay, now the difference between 17, 2.0000, it could go on forever, 1, okay, is slightly under 15. Take them away from each other, is going to give me 4.9999999. So let's see what it wants again. The range for the men is 15 hours. Cannot be true. The most it can be is 14.9999999. Can't be 15 hours. And the third one, the women have a higher median value range than the men. So if we're looking at this one, let's see where the median, the middle number comes. Well, we've got 40 men, 40 women. So 12 plus 11 gives me 23. If we did a cumulative here, that would give me 37, 39 and 40. So if we started off at this one being 12, this one would be 10, 27, 36, 40, 40. So again, the red value here is accumulative. I'm just adding each of these in each field together to get the total. Now, both of them, the midpoint of having 40 men, 40 women would be 20. And the 20th person is going to land in this field. Okay, both within the same range of 5, greater than 5 and less than or equal to 8. So because they're both in that field, it could be true. They could be exactly the same age. Okay, but it might be, at the same time, sorry, but it might be that the 20th woman was at 6 minutes and the 20th man was at 7 minutes. So that would mean it's not true. So it could be true on that one. We haven't got enough information to say because the range is too wide. Question 21, vectors. The key thing to think about vectors, anytime you see any arrow that's just a single line with a little arrow on it saying in that direction, okay, we're counting how many points, how many squares we're going across. We're going 3 squares across and we're going 2 squares up. So we're going 3 across, 2 up. If we look at the B, we're going this route. Okay. Now, if I go from left to right, I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4 squares along, and I'm going 1 down. So if I'm going down, it's negative. If I'm going up, it's positive. If I go to the right, it's positive. If I go to the left, it's negative. Exactly the same as a coordinate grid. Okay. What is B as a column vector? The column vector, if you think as this way is left and right, this way is up or down. So how many am I going to the right? So that's a positive, is going to give me 4. And then I'm going down 1, so it's going to give me -1. So as a column vector, 4 to the right, 1 down. Okay. If the arrow went in a different direction, so I'm going to put B in a different direction. If the arrow went that way, that means I'm going 4 to the left, 1 up. So in that new column vector, 4 to the left would be -4 and 1 up. Okay, if it goes in the opposite direction. But on this question, we're using the top one, so that wouldn't apply. So let's just take that bit out. Work out 4A as a column vector. Okay, well, I've got 4 lots of A, and we know A is 3 to the right, 2 up, so they're both positive. So I've got 3, 2 as a vector, and if I want 4 lots of it, okay, I'm just going to multiply that by 4. My line is like 4 lots of that line. So 4 times 3 gives me 12. 4 times 2 gives me 8. Don't then simplify it, leave it as 12, 8. And question C. Work out C as a column vector. I've got A plus C equals 3, 0. Well, we used A here, so I know A is 3, 2. And I'm going to have to find something that I'm going to add to it that equals 3, 0. Now, this is very similar to having, it's nothing like having fractions where I'm looking just to say 3 plus what equals 3. So if you treat it as 2 different sums, okay, 3 plus 0 equals 3. So we know it's got to start off with a 0, so it's got to be one of those 2. It can't be this one, it can't be this one. Okay, and then 2, I need to get to 0, so I'm taking away 2. Subtract 2. So it will have to be the fourth one there. 2 subtract 2. So treat vectors in that sense, when I'm adding or subtracting them, that rule applies. Okay, just take care if it was a subtract there and not a plus. Okay, remember we could have then 2 minus minus 2, that would give me positive 4. Okay, so just be careful if they put a negative in that middle place just there. Question 22. Work out 7 over 10 minus 4 over 15 divide by 2 over 3. Give your answer as a fraction. So we've just done vectors. It's nothing to do with a vector because I've got fraction symbols in there. So this is all a fraction question. So it's just saying BIDMAS, I've got to do the brackets first, and then I'm going to do the division after it. So I need to do the fractions in the bracket first. So 7 over 10 subtract 4 over 15. Now I'll do it 2 different ways. The way I would do it is I would look to see, can I find the first fraction, okay, that these two intersect. So let's do 7/10. So 14, 21, 28. I'm just doing equivalent fractions by doing the times table of each of the numbers. 20, 30, 40. If I look at the second fraction, I've got 4/15, 8, 12, 16, and 15, 30, 45, 60. So the first one that's going to intersect is 30, denominator of 30. So I could rewrite that as 21 over 30 subtract 8 over 30, which is going to give me 8 away from 21 is going to give me 13 out of 30. I'm then going to take that over the other side, and I'm going to say, right, well, I've got 13 out of 30, and I'm going to divide by 2/3. So KFC, keep, flip, change. Keep the first fraction as 13 out of 30. Flip the second fraction, so it goes 3 over 2, so I'm doing the reciprocal. Okay, so I'm going to flip that upside down, and I change the sign from divide to times. And I'm just going to times it straight across. 13 times 3 is 39. 3 times 2 is 60. It says give my answer as a fraction. It doesn't ask me to simplify it, so I can leave it in that format. I don't want to simplify it and get the simplification wrong. If it doesn't ask me to simplify it, don't simplify it. If it does ask me to simplify it, okay, I could have put, well, 3 goes into 39 into 3 once, into 9 3 times, and 3 goes into 6 twice, and 0 0 times. So I could have put either of those two answers, okay, because 39 over 60 does equal 13 over 20. The way I've done that to calculate the equivalent fractions is quite a straightforward way, because you're only using times tables. If you did want one method that works every single time, okay, you could just multiply the denominator. The only problem with doing this method is you're dealing with them bigger numbers, which you'll have to simplify later. But it would always work for any fraction for adding and subtracting fractions. You just multiply the denominators together. 10 times 15 gives me a denominator of 150. If I'm then going to times this across, because I've times the 10 by 15, okay, I need to times the 7 by 15 to make that fraction the same. So 7 times 15, well, 7 times 10 is 70, 7 times 5 is 35, added together gives me 105. Subtract, and because I've times the 15 by the 10, I need to now times the 4 by the 10, and it's really important that these go in the same place on the top of the fraction. Okay, so 4 times 10 gives me 40, and if I subtract that down, 40 away from that gives me 65 over 150. If I then took the fraction and then I simplified that, okay, I could take that. I don't need to simplify it at this stage. But if we did simplify this, it would give you 13 over 30. Divide that by 5 gives me 13. Divide that by 5 gives me. and I get the same answer as what I've got there. But this method will work any fraction, multiply the denominators together, and then cross multiply the numerators. It just means that you're going to have to simplify it a little bit more when you get to that point. Next question. Work out all the integer whole number, so that means whole number, values for x for which 12 is smaller than or equal to x, but x is smaller than 25. Okay. Now, your starting point on this is literally say, oops, I forgot to put the 4x in there. Okay, is to literally say, well, hang on, I've got 4 lots of x. To be able to calculate this, I want 1 lot of x. So what do I need to do to get rid of that 4? I'm going to divide through by 4. Same as solving an equation to get to that point. Now, because I've done it at this part of that equation, I need to do it both sides. So I need to divide this bit by 4. And 4 goes into 12 3 times. And I need to do this bit by 4. 4 goes into 25. 6 4s are 24. So I can go 6.25. So again, if I'm unsure about that, 4's into 2 doesn't go. 4's into 25 goes 6, remainder 1. Okay, 4's into 10 goes 2, remainder 2, and 4's into 20 goes 5. So always show you workings when you're doing that. Now, because I've got x on its own, what numbers have I got? It could be 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 6.25. Now, if I want whole numbers that it could be, that's my range. 3, 4, 5, 6. So always get my x value on an inequality down to 1x in the middle. List down all the numbers that meet the satisfy the inequality. It couldn't be 6.25, but it's less than that. Whole numbers 3, 4, 5, 6. Question 24. Just looking at the question, there's a lot of information in this question. We've got a Venn diagram to fill out. There's 4 places to fill it out. So let's see if we can start by making sense of this. Here is some information about 120 people who visit a shop. So everyone in my set is going to have to be 120 people in this Venn diagram somewhere. Okay. 3/4 of the people buy neither a coat nor a dress. So they don't buy either. Okay. So the people who buy a coat are in C. People who buy a dress are in D. And we're saying that 3/4 of 120 buy neither. So that's got to go on the outside. Right? So that's my first starting point. So can I divide 120 by 4 to find 1/4? That gives me 30. So 30 equals 1/4. Times it by 3. So 90 equals 3/4. So 90 people go out there. Okay. So we've done that first one. 19 people buy a coat. So in that circle somewhere, in that C, there has to be 19 people somewhere. And that's that whole circle. Okay, I'll rub this out in a second. Right. Next part, 14 people buy a dress. So 14 people buy a dress, and it's that whole circle that buy a dress. Okay, complete the Venn diagram. So if I've got 19 in this side, plus 14, plus 90, how many people do I have? 90, 100, 110, 119, 123. So 123 people out of 120. That means that the middle number has to be a bit of a has to have some crossover in it. Okay. Now it's at this point that you start thinking, if it was 18 people here and it was 14 and 13 people here, because 1 was in the middle, 18 plus 1 plus 13, that's going to give me 18, 19, 29, 32. Okay, so this bit equaled 33. This section equals 32. So I've lost one of those people. Okay, if it was 17 to 12, that's going to give me 17, 27, 29, 31. I've lost two of those people, and I'm 3 people over. So my answer is actually going to be 16 people here, 3 people here, and 11 people here. Now if I add that together, 10, 16, 19, 29, 30. So there are now 30 people in there. 19 have bought a coat, 14 have bought a dress, and 90 is outside. So my easiest way to try and explain it would be initially add up how many you've got with all the information you've given, and whatever the amount you have got over is, that is the number that goes into the center. So I had 123, I had 3 people over, my crossover must be that number. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract the 3 away from each side, and that's going to give me the value on the outside. Question 25. Okay, so I've got ratio involved in this question, n to 1, where n is an integer. Okay, I've got 3 to the power of 6 times 3 to the power of 5, ratio 3 to the power of 7. So I've got to get this side down to 1. How do I do that? I divide by 3 to the power of 7. Divide by whatever it is. That gets me to 1. So a little bit of more of a complicated way of looking at ratio, but the rule of n to 1 is exactly the same. Whatever I need to get down to 1, I just divide by. So I need to divide this by 3 to 7. 3 to the power of 6 times 3 to the power of 5, using the laws of indices, is 3 to the power of 11. Divide by 3 to the power of 7. Remember this one, we just subtract the indices to use the laws of indices. 3 to the power of 11, take away the power of 7, gives me 3 to the power of 4. So I'm doing 3 to the power of 4, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9, 9 times 3 is 27, 27 times 3 is 81. So this side would give me 81 as an integer. N is an integer, whole number. So I'm not going to leave it as a power. I need to then multiply that power out to get 81. 26. A is 10% more than B. Circle the ratio A to B. So you can see all here we've got values of 10 in each number. So what is 10% of 10? 10% of 10 equals 1. So one number, A, is 10% more than B. So A is bigger by 1. So if B is 10, A would have to be 11. So A to B, 11 to 10. Okay. So again, 10% of 10% of 10, remember. Okay. That's the number that's occurring the most. Find 10% of it, add it on, and it says A is 10% more than B. So A has to be the bigger number. So hence my 11 is going to be there. Question 27. So it's telling me I've got to use trigonometry to work out the value of x. So what do I know about trigonometry? Soccer Toa. Okay, so I need to label my triangle first. We carry this line on across to the opposite side. This is going to be my hypotenuse because it's directly opposite the right angle. If I take the angle they give me, then this side is the opposite because it's opposite the angle, and the other thing that's left is the adjacent. Now what I need to say is, what do I know something about? I know that the hypotenuse is 8 centimeters long. They give me the angle, so I know SC and T. You're always going to use SC and T. Okay. And they want me to find the adjacent. So they want me to find the adjacent. Okay. They don't give me the opposite. They don't tell me that I want to find it. It's an X or a Y. They don't want to find it. So by using that, I know I'm using cos. Now, it's a non-calculator question, so that means I'm going to use exact trig values. Okay, if you know them, then that's absolutely fine. If you don't, check my video out on finding exact trig values. On this one, I know I'm using cos, so I want cosine of 60 degrees. Cos 60 is going to give me 1/2. And using the cosine triangle, so cos of 60, the adjacent is my x and my hypotenuse is my 8. If I cover up what I want, then I just multiply the bottom two values together. Remember, if I want the hypotenuse, I'm just going to do adjacent divide by cos 60. On this one I'm doing cos 60, which is 1/2, multiplied by 8, and 1/2 of 8 is 4, and we're in centimeters. So in this case, x equals 4 centimeters. Okay, so if we just started that question and we thought, well, what's 1/2 of 4? Sorry, what's 1/2 of 8? It would be really easy to calculate. Okay, but we've had to get there by using the cos ratio, knowing the exact trigonometry that cos 60 equals 1/2, and then using that in the sum. Okay, and that's the end of the paper. Hope that was useful. See you later.